It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed for the Richardson family. The Golden Palm restaurant buzzed with quiet conversations and the soft clinking of expensive silverware. Soft jazz music played in the background, and warm yellow lights made everything look fancy and perfect. 8-year-old Tommy Richardson sat in his chair, swinging his little legs back and forth. He was wearing his best clothes, a white button-up shirt and navy blue pants that his stepmother had picked out. For him, tonight was special. His dad had just bought another company, and they were celebrating with dinner at the fanciest restaurant in the city. Tommy's father, Michael Richardson, was one of the richest men in the country. He owned tech companies that made smartphones and computers. People called him a billionaire, though Tommy didn't really understand what that meant. He just knew they lived in a huge house with a swimming pool and had cars that cost more than most people's homes. Sitting next to his dad was Victoria, his stepmother. She had married his father 2 years ago. Victoria was always perfectly dressed with not a hair out of place. She was nice enough to Tommy, but she wasn't his real mom. His real mother had died in a car crash when he was 5 years old. At least, that's what everyone had told him. The restaurant was the kind of place where people spoke in whispers and every dish cost more than $100. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and fresh flowers decorated every table. Tommy would have preferred McDonald's, but his dad said important people ate at places like this. "So, Tommy," Victoria said, cutting her salad into tiny pieces, "how was school today?" Tommy shrugged. "Okay, I guess. We learned about butterflies." His father looked up from his phone. "That's nice, son. Did you know some butterflies can fly thousands of miles?" Before Tommy could answer, a waitress approached their table. She was probably in her early 30s, with brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her black uniform was clean but looked a bit worn, like she'd been working long hours. Her name tag said Lisa. The woman walked over with a tired but genuine smile. "Good evening, folks. Welcome to Golden Palm. Can I start you off with some drinks tonight?" Tommy was reaching for his juice box when he looked up at the waitress. Something about her face made him freeze. Her eyes were brown, just like his. She had a small scar on her chin that looked familiar. The way she tilted her head when she smiled reminded him of something, or someone. His juice box slipped from his hands and hit the table with a soft thud. Orange juice spilled across the white tablecloth, but Tommy didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the waitress's face. "Tommy, be careful," Victoria said, reaching for napkins. But Tommy wasn't listening. His heart was beating fast, like when he ran around the playground. This woman looked exactly like someone from his dreams. Someone he remembered in bits and pieces, tucking him into bed, reading him stories, singing lullabies when he couldn't sleep. "That's my mama," Tommy whispered, so quietly that only the waitress heard him. The woman's pen stopped moving on her notepad. Her face went white, like she'd seen a ghost. The smile disappeared from her lips, and her hands started shaking. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Victoria asked, still cleaning up the spilled juice. Tommy's voice got louder, more excited. "That's my mama. That's her." The entire restaurant seemed to stop. Conversations at nearby tables paused. Even the jazz music seemed to get quieter. Tommy's father looked up from his phone, confused. "Tommy, what are you talking about?" Michael asked. "Your mother is—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the waitress. Michael's phone clattered to the floor. His face turned pale, then red, then pale again. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. He stared at the woman standing next to their table, the woman who was supposed to be dead. "Elena?" he whispered. The waitress, Elena, took a step back. Her notepad fell to the floor and papers scattered everywhere. Other waiters and customers started looking their way, sensing drama. I need to," Elena stammered, backing away. From the table. "Wait." Tommy jumped up from his chair, his small voice cutting through the restaurant. "Don't go, please don't go away again." Elena stopped. Tears were forming in her eyes as she looked at her son, the little boy she hadn't held in 3 years. He was taller now, and his face had lost some of its baby fat. But his eyes were the same, full of love and hope. Victoria looked back and forth between Michael and the waitress, completely confused. "Michael, what's going on? Who is this woman?" Michael couldn't speak. The woman standing in front of him was Elena Richardson, his first wife, the mother of his child, the woman who had supposedly died in a terrible car accident 3 years ago. He had buried an empty coffin. He had grieved for months. He had explained to Tommy that Mommy had gone to heaven and wouldn't be coming back, but here she was, very much alive, wearing a waitress uniform and serving tables for tips. The restaurant manager appeared, sensing trouble. "Is everything all right? Over here?" Elena wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry, I need a moment." "Mama, why did you go away?" Tommy asked, his voice small and hurt. "I missed you so much." Other diners were openly staring now. Some had their phones out, probably recognizing Michael Richardson from business magazines and news articles. The last thing he needed was this becoming a social media sensation. Elena knelt down to Tommy's level, fighting back tears. "Oh, sweetie, it's complicated." "Elena," Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. "We buried you. There was a funeral. Your body. We need to talk," Elena said quietly. "But not here. Not like this." Victoria finally understood what was happening. The woman her husband thought was dead was standing right in front of them, alive and working as a waitress. The perfect family dinner had just become something out of a movie. Tommy reached out to touch Elena's hand. "Are you really my mama? I dream about you sometimes." Elena's heart broke a little more. "Yes, baby, I'm your mama." The restaurant manager looked nervous. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private?" Michael nodded, still in shock. "Yes. Elena, we need to talk. Now." As they prepared to move to a private dining room, Tommy held onto Elena's hand like he was afraid she might disappear again. Victoria gathered her purse, her mind racing with questions. And Michael wondered how his dead wife had come back to life, and why she had been hiding as a waitress just 20 minutes from their home. The night that was supposed to be a celebration had just become the most shocking moment of their lives. And this was only the beginning of a story that would change everything they thought they knew about their family. The private dining room felt smaller than it actually was. Tommy sat close to Elena, refusing to let go of her hand. His small fingers wrapped around hers like he was holding on to something precious that might slip away. Victoria had taken him home an hour ago, but not before Tommy made Elena promise she wouldn't disappear again. Now it was just Michael and Elena, sitting across from each other at a mahogany table that had probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. The silence between them was heavy, filled with 3 years of questions, pain, and confusion. Michael's hands shook as he poured himself a glass of water. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I held your funeral. I watched them lower your coffin into the ground." Elena looked older than when he'd last seen her. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, and her hands were rough from hard work. She wore a simple silver wedding ring, the same one he'd put on her finger 8 years ago. "I know," she said quietly. "I was there." "What do you mean you were there?" Elena took a deep breath. "I watched from behind the trees. I saw you crying. I saw Tommy throwing flowers on the coffin. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." Michael felt like the world was spinning. Nothing made sense anymore. "Elena, what happened that night? The police said your car went off the bridge. They found blood. Your purse, they said." "They said what they were told to say," Elena interrupted. "Michael, there are things about your business that you don't know. Things that your brother kept, hidden from you." "Robert? What does Robert have to do with this?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Everything. He's the one who made me disappear." 3 years ago, Elena had been going through some old files in Michael's home office. She was looking for their insurance papers when she found a folder hidden behind other documents. Inside were contracts, bank statements, and shipping records that didn't match anything she knew about Michael's tech companies. The papers showed money transfers to accounts in countries where wars were happening. There were orders for equipment that wasn't computers or phones. Elena had worked as an accountant before Tommy was born, and she knew what she was looking at. Someone was using Michael's companies to sell weapons and hide money from illegal activities. "I found the papers," Elena said. "Documents showing that Richardson Industries wasn't just making smartphones. Someone was using your company to move weapons to dangerous people. The money was being washed through fake accounts." Michael's face went white. "That's impossible. We make technology, phones, computers, software." "That's what I thought too. So I dug deeper. I stayed up all night going through everything. The trail led back to Robert. Your own brother was using your company as a front for illegal weapons dealing." Elena remembered that terrible night clearly. She had printed copies of everything and planned to show Michael the next morning. But Robert had been watching. He knew she'd found the evidence. "He came to the house while you were at that conference. In Seattle," Elena continued. "He had 2 men with him. They weren't wearing masks or trying to hide who they were, which scared me more than anything." Robert had given Elena a choice that no mother should ever have to make. She could turn over the evidence and disappear forever, letting everyone believe she was dead. Or she could try to expose him and both she and Tommy would have real accidents. "He showed me pictures," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Pictures of Tommy at school, at the playground. He knew exactly where our son was." Every minute of every day, Michael felt sick. His own brother, the man who had held Tommy as a baby, who came to family dinners every Sunday, had threatened to kill his wife and child. "Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Robert showed me more papers." "Papers, with your signature on them. Bank accounts with your name. You were listed as the owner of companies that didn't exist. He made it look like you were the one running everything." The truth was even worse than Michael could have imagined. Robert had been forging his signature for years, setting up fake companies using Michael's identity. If Elena had gone to the police, Michael would have been arrested too. Tommy would have lost both parents. "So I made the only choice I could," Elena said. "I gave him the evidence I'd found. I got in my car and drove to the bridge. Robert's men had been following her. They forced her car off the road before she reached the bridge, but not into the water. Instead, they took her to an abandoned warehouse outside the city. They staged everything," Elena explained. "They put some of my blood in the car and pushed it into the river. They made sure my purse would be found. Robert had connections with people who could make death certificates appear and make questions disappear." Elena spent 2 weeks in that warehouse while Robert arranged her new identity. She was given a fake social security number, a new name, and a warning that if she ever tried to contact Michael or Tommy, both of them would die. "He gave me $500 and a bus ticket to Phoenix," Elena said. "He told me I was dead now, and if I ever tried to come back to life, he'd make sure Tommy became an orphan." For 3 years, Elena had worked minimum wage jobs, moving from city to city. She cleaned office buildings at night, waited tables during the day, and lived in tiny apartments with other people who were also trying to stay invisible. But she never stopped watching her family. "I came back to the city 6 months ago," Elena admitted. "I know I shouldn't have, but I missed Tommy so much it felt like dying every day. I got the job at Golden Palm because I knew you ate there sometimes. I thought maybe I could just see him once in a while from far away." Michael realized what this meant. "You've been watching us?" "I went to his school plays. I sat in the back where you wouldn't see me. I watched him learn to ride his bike at the park. I saw him take his first swimming lessons. I was there for his 7th birthday party, hiding across the street." Elena had watched Victoria come into their lives too. She'd seen her son calling another woman Mom, and felt her heart break a little more each time. But she'd also seen that Victoria was kind to Tommy, and that was all that mattered. "I never meant for tonight to happen," Elena said. "I didn't know you'd be there. When Tommy recognized me, I couldn't lie to him." Michael was quiet for a long time, processing everything Elena had told him. His brother, his best friend, his business partner, The person he trusted most in the world had destroyed their family to protect his criminal empire. Robert's been helping me grieve for 3 years, Michael said bitterly. He's been coming to dinner every Sunday asking about Tommy, pretending to care about our family. The whole time he knew exactly where you were. He's been watching. You too, Elena warned. Making sure you don't ask too many questions about the business. Making sure you stay focused on the technology side while he handles everything else. Michael thought about all the times Robert had discouraged him from looking at certain files, all the business trips Robert took alone, all the contracts Robert said were too boring for Michael to worry about. What do we do now? Michael asked. Elena squeezed his hand. I don't know, but I won't run away again. I can't. Tommy needs to know his real mother, and you need to know the truth about what your brother has done. They sat in silence, both knowing that their lives had just become very dangerous. Robert would find out that Elena was alive, and when he did, he would do anything to protect his secrets. But for the first time in 3 years, Elena felt hope. She was with her husband again, and soon she would hold her son. Whatever happened next, they would face it together as a family. The next morning, Michael woke up feeling like he'd lived through a nightmare. But when he walked downstairs and saw Elena sitting at his kitchen table, drinking coffee and talking quietly with Tommy, he knew it was all real. His wife was alive. His brother was a criminal. And their perfect life had been built on lies. Tommy was showing Elena his drawing from school, a picture of a family with a mom, dad, and little boy. I always drew 3 people, he said proudly. Victoria said I should just draw 2. But I always knew you'd come back. Elena's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the drawing. For 3 years, she'd missed every drawing, every story, every goodnight kiss. But somehow Tommy had never stopped believing she would return. Victoria walked into the kitchen looking uncomfortable. She'd barely slept, trying to understand how the woman she thought was dead was now making breakfast in her kitchen. I should probably leave you 3 alone, she said quietly. No, Elena said quickly. You're part of this family too. Tommy cares about you, and that makes you important to me. It was awkward, but it was real. 2 women who loved the same child, trying to figure out how to share a family that had been broken and put back together in a completely different way. Meanwhile, across town, Robert Richardson was having his morning coffee when his phone rang. It was Dave, one of his security men who worked part-time as a waiter at several upscale restaurants around the city. Boss, you're not going to believe what I saw last night at Golden Palm, Dave said nervously. Robert listened as Dave described the scene, Michael's shock, Tommy's recognition, and the woman who looked exactly like Elena Richardson walking away with her family. When Dave finished talking, Robert sat in silence for a full minute. Are you absolutely sure it was her? Robert asked. Positive. She's been working there for months. Goes by the name Lisa, but it's definitely your brother's dead wife. Robert hung up the phone and stared out his office window. This was bad. Very bad. Elena was supposed to be gone forever. The fact that she was alive and working 20 minutes from Michael's house meant she'd been watching them, waiting, planning. He immediately called his assistant. Cancel all my meetings today, and get me everything we have on the Golden Palm restaurant. Staff records, security footage, everything. Robert had built his criminal empire carefully over the past 15 years. He'd used his brother's legitimate tech companies as a front, moving money and weapons through fake contracts and shell companies. Michael was the perfect cover, smart enough to run the real business, but too trusting to ask the right questions. When Elena had discovered the evidence, 3 years ago, Robert had acted quickly, but he'd made one mistake. He'd let her live. He'd thought that threatening Tommy would be enough to keep her quiet forever. He'd been wrong. Now he had to figure out how much Elena knew, how much she'd told Michael, and how much danger they were, all in. Robert made another phone call. I need you to find out everything about Lisa Chen. She works at Golden Palm Restaurant. Where she lives, who she talks to, what she does when she's not working. And be careful. She might be more dangerous than she looks. Back at Michael's house, Elena was explaining more about what she'd discovered during her 3 years in hiding. She hadn't just been surviving, she'd been investigating. "I knew that running away wouldn't solve anything," Elena told Michael, as they sat in his study. "Robert would still be using your companies for illegal activities, so I started gathering evidence." Elena pulled out a small notebook from her purse. It was filled with dates, times, names, and places. For 3 years, she'd been tracking Robert's movements, photographing his meetings, and documenting everything she could about his criminal network. "I worked different jobs in different cities, but I always found ways to come back here," Elena explained. "I watched Robert's house, I followed his associates. I learned about his business partners and how they move money and weapons. She'd been more careful than Robert realized. Elena had worked as a cleaning lady in the office building where Robert kept a secret office. She'd photographed documents when no one was looking. She'd listened to phone conversations and memorized license plate numbers." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Michael asked. "Because Robert has connections everywhere. Remember, he made my death certificate appear overnight. He has people in the police department, in the courthouse, probably in the FBI too. I needed to build a case so strong that he couldn't make it disappear." Elena had also been working with someone else, a journalist named Amy Chen, who specialized in investigating corporate crime. Amy had been looking into Richardson Industries for 2 years, but she'd never been able to prove anything. When Elena contacted her 6 months ago, they'd started working together. "Amy has been helping me organize all the evidence," Elena said. "We have bank records, shipping documents, photographs, and recordings, enough to prove that Robert has been using your companies to sell weapons to dangerous people all over the world." But Elena and Amy had to be very careful. They knew Robert was watching for any signs that someone was investigating him. They met in different places each time, used code words, and never communicated electronically. Victoria joined them in the study looking worried. "What happens now? If Robert finds out that Elena is alive and gathering evidence against him?" "He'll try to eliminate all of us," Elena said quietly. "Me, Michael, Tommy, maybe even you. He's too close to getting away with everything to let us stop him now." Michael felt sick thinking about the danger they were all in. His own brother was capable of murder. The man who'd taught him to play baseball, who'd been best man at his wedding, who brought Tommy presents every Christmas. That same man had threatened to kill his family. "There's something else," Elena said. "Victoria, I think Robert has been using you too." Victoria looked confused. "What do you mean?" "How did you meet Michael?" Elena asked gently. Victoria thought back. "I was working at a marketing company. We were hired to do some work for Richardson Industries. Robert introduced us at a business dinner." Elena and Michael exchanged looks. It wasn't a coincidence. "Robert picked you," Elena realized. He needed someone close to Michael who could watch him, report back about his mood and his activities. Someone who could keep him distracted and make sure he didn't start asking too many questions about the business. Victoria's face went pale. She thought about all the casual conversations she'd had with Robert over the past 2 years. How he'd ask about Michael's work schedule, about whether Michael seemed stressed or suspicious about anything. She'd thought Robert was just being a caring brother. "Oh my God," Victoria whispered. "I've been spying on my own husband without even knowing it." Elena reached over and took Victoria's hand. "You didn't know. Robert is very good at manipulating people. He's been doing it for years." Now they had to figure out their next move. Elena had enough evidence to expose Robert, but they needed to be smart about how they used it. Robert was dangerous and he had resources they couldn't match. "We need to contact Amy," Elena said. "She's been working on a story that will expose everything. But we have to move fast. Robert probably knows I'm alive by now, and he'll be planning his next move." Michael looked at his family. His wife who'd been presumed dead, his son who'd just gotten his mother back, and his stepmother who'd just learned she'd been unknowingly betraying them all. They were all in danger because of his brother's greed and criminal activities. "What about Tommy?" Michael asked. "How do we keep him safe?" "We don't run," Elena said firmly. "I've been running for 3 years, and it didn't solve anything. This time we stand and fight. But we do it smart, and we do it together." Outside, a black car drove slowly past the house. The driver took pictures of the windows and license plates in the driveway. Robert was already making his plans, and the Richardson family was about to discover just how far he would go to protect his secrets. 2 days later, Michael walked into the Richardson Industries building with his heart pounding. The 40-story glass tower had always felt like home to him. Today, it felt like walking into enemy territory. Elena was hidden in a coffee shop across the street, listening through a tiny recording device they'd taped under Michael's shirt collar. The plan was simple but dangerous. Michael would confront Robert in his office while Elena recorded everything. They needed Robert to admit what he'd done: the fake death, the illegal weapons dealing, the threats against their family. Without a confession, Robert could deny everything and disappear with his criminal network intact. Michael's hands were sweating as he rode the elevator to the top floor. Robert's office took up half of the building's penthouse level, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. It was designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. Today, Michael felt exactly that way. "Michael." Robert stood, up from his massive desk with a big smile. "What brings you here? I thought you were taking some family time after the other night." Robert looked the same as always. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, confident smile. But now Michael could see something cold behind his brother's eyes that he'd never noticed before. "We need to talk," Michael said, closing the office door behind him. "Of course. Sit down. You look upset." Robert gestured to the leather chairs in front of his desk. "I've been worried about you since Tuesday night. That must have been quite a shock, seeing someone who looked so much like Elena." Michael felt anger rising in his chest. "She didn't just look like Elena, Robert, she was Elena." Robert's smile didn't change, but his eyes got harder. "That's impossible, Michael. We both know Elena died 3 years ago. You're still grieving, and sometimes grief can make us see things that aren't really there." "Stop lying to me," Michael said, his voice getting louder. "I spent 2 hours talking to my wife. She told me everything. About the documents she found. About you threatening Tommy. About how you faked her death." Robert walked around his desk slowly, like a predator circling its prey. "Michael, you're talking crazy. I think you need to see a doctor. Maybe some medication to help with the stress. Elena has been gathering evidence against you for 3 years, Michael continued. She knows about the weapons dealing. She knows about the money laundering. She has photographs, bank records, everything." For just a moment, Robert's mask slipped. The friendly smile disappeared, and Michael saw the real man underneath, cold, calculating, and dangerous. "Where is she?" Robert asked quietly. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can't hurt her." Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, little brother. Do you think this is some kind of movie? Do you think you can just waltz in here and threaten me? I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. Turn yourself in. Shut down the illegal operations. Maybe the judge will go easy on you because you cooperated." "The right thing?" Robert's voice was getting dangerous now. "I built this empire. I took our father's small computer repair shop and turned it into a billion-dollar company. I made you rich beyond your wildest dreams. And you want to destroy it all because of some documents your dead wife thinks she found?" "Elena isn't dead," Michael shouted. "She will be," Robert said coldly. "And so will Tommy. And so will that stepmother of his who's been asking too many questions. And so will you if you don't walk out of here right now and forget this conversation ever happened." Across the street, Elena heard every word through her earpiece. Her blood went cold when Robert threatened Tommy. She immediately called Amy, Chen, who was waiting with a team of federal agents 3 blocks away. "He just confessed to planning to kill us all," Elena whispered into her phone. "Move now." Back in the office, Michael stood up from his chair. "You're my brother. How could you threaten to kill my son?" "Tommy isn't your son," Robert said with a cruel smile. "He's a loose end, just like his mother was supposed to be." That was the moment Michael finally understood who his brother really was. This wasn't the man who taught him to ride a bike or helped him with homework. This was someone who saw human lives as problems to be solved, including the lives of his own family. "You're insane," Michael said. "I'm practical," Robert corrected. "Elena should have stayed dead. The fact that she's alive means I made a mistake 3 years ago. I don't make the same mistake twice." Robert walked to his desk and opened a drawer. Michael's heart stopped when he saw his brother pull out a gun. "You're going to call Elena," Robert said, pointing the weapon at Michael. "You're going to tell her to come here, and then we're going to take a little drive together." "I won't do it." "Yes, you will, because if you don't, I'll kill you right now and then go to your house and kill Tommy myself. At least this way, the three of you can die together." Michael's mind raced. The recording device was still working. Elena could hear everything. But that wouldn't matter if Robert killed them all before the police arrived. "Make the call," Robert demanded. Michael pulled out his phone with shaking hands, but before he could dial, the office door burst open. Victoria ran in, followed by 2 security guards. "Michael," she shouted, "Robert's men are at the house. They have Tommy." Robert spun around, momentarily distracted. "What are you doing here?" "I came to warn you," Victoria said, breathing hard. "There are FBI agents surrounding the building. Elena called them. They know everything." It was a lie, but a convincing art. Victoria had actually come on her own, worried about Michael's safety. The security guards with her were actually federal agents who'd been watching the building. Robert's face twisted with rage. "You betrayed me too?" "I was never loyal to you," Victoria said. "I love Michael and Tommy. I would never help you hurt them." Robert raised his gun toward Victoria, but Michael tackled him. The 2 brothers crashed into the desk, sending papers and office supplies flying everywhere. Robert was bigger and stronger, but Michael was fighting for his family's life. The gun went off during their struggle, shattering one of the massive windows. Glass rained down on the city street below as the brothers fought for control of the weapon. "Federal agents!" The real FBI team burst through the office door, weapons drawn. "Drop your weapon!" Robert broke free from Michael and grabbed Victoria, holding the gun to her head. "Stay back, I'll kill her!" "Let her go, Robert," Michael pleaded. "She doesn't have anything to do with this. She has everything to do with this," Robert screamed. "She was supposed to watch you. She was supposed to keep you from asking questions. Instead, she helped you destroy everything I built." The lead FBI agent stepped forward slowly. "Mr. Richardson, we have the building surrounded. There's nowhere to go. Let the woman go and we can work this out." "Work it out?" Robert laughed hysterically. "You have no idea how deep this goes. I have connections in places you can't imagine. I have enough money hidden away to disappear forever." That's when Elena appeared in the doorway. She'd managed to get past security during the chaos. "Robert," she said calmly, "let Victoria go. Your fight is with me." Robert's eyes went wide when he saw Elena. For a moment, it was like he was seeing a ghost. "You're supposed to be dead," he whispered. "But I'm not. And now everyone knows what you did. It's over." Robert's hand started shaking. He was trapped, and he knew it. The FBI had evidence. His brother had turned against him. His criminal empire was crumbling around him. "If I can't have it," Robert said, "then no one can." He pointed the gun at Elena, but Victoria elbowed him in the ribs. The gun went off again, this time hitting Robert in the shoulder. He dropped the weapon and fell to the floor, clutching his wound. The FBI agents immediately moved in, securing the gun and calling for medical assistance. Robert lay on the expensive carpet, bleeding and finally defeated. "It's over," Elena said, rushing to Michael's side. "He can't hurt our family anymore." But even as the paramedics worked on Robert's wound and the FBI agents read him his rights, Michael knew this was just the beginning. They still had to testify in court, still had to rebuild their lives, and still had to help Tommy understand why his uncle had tried to hurt his family. The Richardson family was finally safe, but their real journey toward healing was just beginning. 6. Months later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of a small house in Coastal View, Oregon. It wasn't anything like the mansion they'd left behind in the city. This house had 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a tiny kitchen where the refrigerator sometimes made funny noises. But it was theirs, and more importantly, it was honest. Elena stood at the kitchen window, watching Tommy play in their small backyard. He was building something with wooden blocks, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration, the same face he'd made as a toddler when he was focused on something important. She'd missed 3 years of those faces, but she was determined not to miss any more. "Coffee's ready," Michael said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. He looked different now, less stressed, more at peace. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by simple jeans and t-shirts. He'd lost some weight during the trial, but he was sleeping better now than he had in years. "Thank you," Elena said, leaning back against his chest. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes." "Which part? That we're together again? Or that we're poor now?" Michael joked. Elena laughed. "We're not poor, we're just normal." The past 6 months had been the hardest and most healing time of their lives. Robert's trial had made national news. The FBI had uncovered a criminal network that stretched across 15 countries, involving weapons trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption. Robert was now serving 3 consecutive life sentences in federal prison, but the trial had also revealed how deep Michael's unknowing involvement had been. Even though he'd been manipulated and lied to, his signature was on documents his companies had been used for illegal activities, and his bank accounts had processed dirty money. The government had seized most of their assets as evidence. Michael had cooperated fully with the investigation, testifying against his brother and helping the FBI understand how the criminal network operated. In exchange, he'd received a suspended sentence and community service instead of prison time. But they'd lost almost everything: the mansion, the expensive cars, the private schools, the vacation homes. "I don't miss it," Michael said, and he meant it. "The money, the pressure, always wondering if I could trust the people around me. This is better." Elena turned in his arms. "Even living in a house where the bathroom door doesn't close all the way? Especially then. At least I know all our doors are honest now." Through the kitchen window, they could see Victoria working in their small garden. She'd moved to Oregon with them, something that had surprised everyone, including herself. She could have started over anywhere, with anyone. Instead, she'd chosen to stay with this complicated, rebuilt family. The transition hadn't been easy for any of them. Tommy had struggled with nightmares for months, confused about why his uncle had tried to hurt them and why they'd had to leave their old house so suddenly. Elena and Victoria had to figure out how to be co-mothers to a boy they both loved. And Michael had to learn how to live without the wealth and power he'd known his entire adult life. But they'd worked through it together, with the help of family therapy and a lot of patience. "Mama! Victoria! Dad!" Tommy's voice called from the backyard. "Come see what I built." They all walked outside to find Tommy standing proudly next to an elaborate fort made of blocks, sticks, and an old cardboard box. A hand-drawn sign read, "Richardson. Family Castle. All welcome." "It's got a kitchen for Mama, and an office for Dad, and a garden for Victoria," Tommy explained, "and a secret room where we can hide if bad people try to find us." Elena's heart squeezed. Even at 9 years old, Tommy still worried about their safety sometimes. The child psychologist said it would take time for him to feel completely secure. Again. "It's perfect," Elena said, kneeling down to hug him. "The best castle I've ever seen." "Can we have lunch in it?" Tommy asked. "Of course," Victoria said. "I'll make sandwiches." As Victoria headed back to the kitchen, Elena watched her with gratitude. The woman who could have been her rival had become her closest friend and partner in raising Tommy. It wasn't traditional, but it worked for their family. Michael now worked as a consultant for small tech companies, helping them develop software and avoid the kind of legal troubles he'd experienced. The pay was a fraction of what he'd made before, but the work was honest and fulfilling. He'd discovered he actually enjoyed solving real problems instead of just managing other people's money. Elena had returned to social work, something she'd done before Tommy was born. She specialized in helping families affected by crime, using her own experience to guide others through trauma and recovery. Some days were hard, but knowing she was helping people rebuild their lives gave her purpose. They'd all had to learn new skills too. Elena had learned to cook, really cook, not just heat up expensive takeout. Michael had learned to fix things around the house instead of calling repair services. Victoria had discovered she loved gardening and was growing most of their vegetables. You know what I was thinking about this morning? Elena said as they sat on their small porch watching Tommy play in his fort. What? Michael asked. That night at the restaurant when Tommy first saw me, I was so scared. I thought everything would fall apart, that Robert would find out and hurt all of you. Instead, everything came together, Victoria said, joining them with a pitcher of lemonade. Not everything, Elena said honestly. We lost a lot. The house, the money, the life we thought we wanted. But we gained more, Michael said. We gained the truth. We gained each other. We gained the chance to build something real. Tommy ran over to them, his face flushed with excitement. I want to show you something else, he said. He disappeared into the house and came back with a photo album Elena had never seen before. Victoria helped me make this, he said, sitting between Elena and Michael. It's pictures of our family. Elena's breath caught as Tommy opened the album. The first pages were photos from before she'd disappeared. Tommy as a baby, family vacations, birthday parties. But then came pictures she'd never seen before. Tommy at school plays, learning to swim, riding his first bicycle. Victoria took pictures for you, Tommy explained. She said that even though you weren't there, you'd want to see me growing up. Elena looked at Victoria with tears in her eyes. During those 2 years when Victoria thought Elena was dead, she'd been documenting Tommy's life for a mother she believed would never see it. I thought, maybe someday when Tommy was older, he'd want to remember, Victoria said quietly. I never imagined you'd actually be here to see them. The album continued with pictures from the past 6 months. Their first night in the new house, Tommy's first day at his new school, family dinners around their small kitchen table, Elena teaching Tommy to plant vegetables in Victoria's garden. We look happy, Tommy said, studying a recent photo of the 4 of them at the beach. We are happy, Elena said. Different than before, but happy. Do you think Uncle Robert will ever say he's sorry? Tommy asked. It was a question he'd asked before. Elena and Michael had decided to always be honest with him, even when the truth was hard. I don't know, sweetheart, Elena said. Some people have trouble admitting when they've done wrong things. But what matters is that we're safe now, and we're together. And we have our castle, Tommy added, pointing to his fort. And we have our castle, Michael agreed. As the sun began to set, they sat on their porch together, a family that had been broken apart and put back together in a completely different way. They didn't have much money anymore. Their house was small, and sometimes the plumbing made strange noises. They drove a used car that was older than Tommy, but they had something that no amount of money could buy. They had truth. They had trust. They had the knowledge that they would face whatever came next together, as a real family built on love instead of lies. Elena reached over and took Michael's hand, the same way she had on their wedding day 8 years ago. Back then, she'd promised to love him for richer or poorer. She'd never imagined they'd actually test the poorer part. But sitting on that small porch, watching their son play in the yard while Victoria hummed in the garden, Elena knew they'd found something much more valuable than wealth. They'd found their way back to each other, and this time, no one could take that away from them.